And so I don't know why it's not launching.
That's great. All right, I'm gonna go love on my man, I guess.
Okay, you be booed up.
All right, love you, bye.
But I had to call you because I was like, this is some BS.
I knew you were gonna love it, especially while people are harassing you, thinking that you run all the programs. I was like, this will take them out.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, just look it up. Well, who's all the partners? I don't know. I said, did you not read the IRB because it lists some people there too?
Yep, everything's like all the names and the number and yes. Yep.
So I don't know.
All right. Love you.
Love you too. Bye. Why can't I start it? Oh.
Day on voting. My name is Marcia Jones, and I am a member of the Kalamazoo Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I am also the co-chair of the Social Action Committee, along with my soror, Stacy Ledbetter. We thank you for attending this event this evening on this National Voter Registration Day. This program will be very informative, and we appreciate your attendance. At this time, I would like to introduce the president of the Kalamazoo Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Dr. Yvonne Jackson.
Thank you, Soror Jones. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for attending our voting rights talk. We want to stress that voting is a right and a privilege, and that everyone knows what their rights are. And so we're so grateful for our soror coming to give us this information from the state. Again, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Soror Jackson. Next, we will hear from representatives of our co-sponsoring organizations who will speak to us on why knowing your voting rights is important to each organization. We will first hear from Halbert Bates, who will be representing NPHC of Kalamazoo. We will then hear from Corey King, who will be representing the Kalamazoo Metropolitan Branch of the NAACP. Mr. Bates?
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great. Okay. Yes, the question is, why is knowing your rights as a voter so important today? Well, it's important today because if you don't vote, if you don't exercise that right, it's already been stated that it's a privilege that we have gained since we were actually given the right as Black people in 1869, then it was taken away, and then it came back again. I'm sure probably our speaker is going to cover more in detail, but just why it's important that we get involved in the process now is so that we can help elect individuals from a local standpoint that are in our community to help us meet some of our basic needs. If we don't vote, then we don't have the opportunity or to make change. A no vote is a yes vote for the opposition. So it's important that we exercise our right to vote. This also provides an opportunity to strengthen your community. A lot of times, we just feel like it's not going to make a difference if we vote. Well, absolutely. If you don't vote, then the opportunity is not even possibly going to be possible. So it's important that we exercise our right to vote. Voting can also enhance the quality of life in your community by voting. And it's also important that you don't just just arbitrarily vote for a person because you heard some things about them, some nice things about them. You want to make sure that you do your research, that this individual or whomever is going to be meeting your or the community specific needs that's going to, again, enhance that community. So there are a lot of different important factors that play in your local election or right to vote that really, once again, can help your community in the surrounding area that you live, but on a national level as well. I participated in voter registrations in the Kalamazoo area, and I was pretty amazed and shocked of the number of people who aren't registered to vote. And so it's important, once again, that we promote it and we encourage people to vote for local elections as well as national elections. So in a nutshell, you have the right to vote, vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Hello, everyone. So the reason that voting is important to me and why I think it's important to a lot of people in the NAACP is because so many people have fought and died for the right for Black people to vote. People like Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, who's one of my all-time favorite civil rights leaders, was beaten in a jail cell just because she was registered people to vote. And she was one of the few people who had the backbone to speak truth to power and speak about why it's important to vote, especially people who are marginalized in our society. So that's why it's important to me, because so many people, especially in this day and age, don't realize that there are people in our government, people in a lot of state governments, especially in the South, who are trying to work to take that right away from us, especially Black and brown people. So we have to be vigilant, especially in this day and age when our democracy is at stake, especially in this upcoming election next year, to make sure that all people are registered to vote, especially Black and brown people. And when I think about the 2020 election and 2024 election, it was Black people who saved our democracy. It was the people, especially Black women, who saved this country from another 4 years of number 45. So I believe it's extremely important for us to continue voter registration efforts, making sure people know their rights, especially people who may have a felony, to know that what their rights are in regards to voting, and getting involved in, like Mr. Bates said, getting informed, not just voting, but knowing who you're voting for, knowing where they stand on the issues, especially when you talk about down ballot races. When people think about voting, they think about the president, think about governor, senator, but there are so many races on the bottom portion of that ballot, on the back of that ballot, that are extremely important, have more of an effect on the daily lives of all of us, all of our daily lives. So that's why it's important to vote for things like county prosecutor and county commissioner and city commissioner, and even school board, especially in this day and age when we have people trying to ban books, trying to whitewash Black history in our schools. So it's extremely important that we make sure that we vote not just for president, not just for governor, but all the way down the ballot, turn it over, and vote for those proposals and those millages also. So that's why I believe voting is important to me and our organization.
Thank you. Next, we will have the introduction of our guest speaker by the Honorable Elisa Parker-Legrone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to announce our speaker, who has an awesome bio. I am going to actually read it because I think that she does some awesome things on this stage. Not only is she educated, a fellow attorney, but I think her accomplishments are definitely worth speaking about. So I'm going to go to her bio now. So we have tonight joining us Khyla D. Craine, Esquire, who is the Deputy Director for the Michigan Department of State, where she helps guide the Secretary of State on the department's legal, policy, and operations matters. which oversees elections, motor vehicle credentialing, and the Office of the Great Seal of the State of Michigan. Ms. Craine focuses on protecting the privacy of 8 million residents that have data stored within the department, increasing access to government for marginalized communities, and internal guidance on contracting. Ms. Craine is also responsible for overseeing the majority of data, contract review, negotiation, and signing for the executive office signature. Since 2021, she served as project manager for returning citizens and foster care youth ID and/or driver's license project. Since September, I should say, of 2020, 12,000 returning citizens have received their driver's license or state ID upon exiting prison, which is awesome and an awesome program. Currently, Ms. Craine is working to expand the program to the county level. In 2022, Ms. Craine launched the department's Road to Restoration clinics, bringing nonprofit, corporate, legal, and government partners together to assist residents in determining how to regain their driving privileges. With over 20 clinics, the project has assisted more than 5,000 Michiganders across the state to obtain their driver's license and remove barriers in obtaining their driver's license. Previously, Ms. Craine served as an attorney for the NAACP, where she guided the association's leadership team on negotiations, contracts, corporate governance, civil rights, and legal advocacy, which also includes co-authoring and/or editing several amicus briefs in various federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. She also led the NAACP's work on the census prior to the 2020 decennial survey. The Ann Arbor, Michigan native is a graduate of Howard University Law School and South Carolina State University. In 2014, Ms. Craine co-authored an article entitled "Returning Citizens: How Shifting Law and Policy in Maryland Will Help Citizens Who Return from Incarceration" in the University of Baltimore's Law School Law Forum. She has also written op-eds and columns for the Root magazine. For her work and commitment to social justice, she has received numerous awards, including the inaugural 2021 South Carolina State University's Top 40 Under 40 Alumni Award, 2019 NBA Equal Justice and President's Awardee, 2016 NBA Top 40 Under 40 Nation's Best Advocates Award, 2018 NAACP Office of General Counsel Employee of the Year, Lawyer Award. She has also served her community through membership in Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, where she serves on the National Social Action Commission, the Junior League of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the National Bar Association. So without further ado, I am so pleased to bring forth Khyla, I should say, D. Grimes. I should call you doctor because you have the credentials. I am so happy to welcome you on stage, Soror.
Thank you so much, Soror. I'm so glad to be with you. Thank you to Soror Jones for inviting me. So excited to be with all of you in the Kalamazoo area. Pleased to see Mr. Bates and Mr. King and our friends from the League of Women Voters for Kalamazoo, all partners that we get to work with here at the Department of State very often as we do not only our election work, but also our motor vehicle credentialing work across the state. So I bring you greetings from the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, and all of us at the Department of State. So excited that I get to wear both hats simultaneously, both representing the Secretary and the work that she does every day to ensure that all eligible Michiganders have the equal and unfettered access to vote, but also my hat with Delta Sigma Theta. I'm a proud soror of 20 years in our beloved sorority, and very excited to come to you and talk about how our alumni chapter there in Kalamazoo and our partners can do the very important work of making sure that folks are registered, educated, prepared, and actually do go vote, no matter how they vote, whether it is on the last day to vote, as we call it, which is election day, or if they want to vote at home. And hopefully very soon, we'll be able to participate in early voting during the presidential election year beginning next February. So SARS and friends, I know we have a lot to talk about this evening, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started, and hopefully I can save some time at the end if you do have any questions for me. Thank you, Sora Lisa, for your kind introduction. I do also want to recognize our Michigan State Social Action Coordinator who is here, Sarah Stephen Atara. Thank you for being here. And if there are any SARS from my home chapter, the Ann Arbor Alumni chapter, glad to see you all here as well. So, all right, all of that out the way, let's go ahead and get started. So in our, there we go. All right, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yes.
With the Department of State, we hold a Your Vote Counts webinar. We did that all last year, or at least about half of last year, from July through November, to tell residents about how they can interact with elections in our state. And so I'm going to go through that Elections 101 to make sure that we have a great foundation, not only about how to vote in our state, but some of the new constitutional amendments that voters put into our Constitution after the 2022 election, and some really exciting things that we have coming up as we prepare for the 2024 presidential election. So wanted to make sure that you all know that you can go to our website at the Department of State, go to michigan.gov/vote, where you can find a lot of great information about your particular opportunity to cast your ballot. So you can update your voter information. If you have moved, you want to make sure that that is up to date. You can check your registration status. You can ask for and track your absentee ballot. You can view a sample ballot, which is going to be of particular import for this year if you reside there in Kalamazoo County. And then you can also find your local clerk information. I do want to kind of pause there because it's so very important that you know that your local clerk, whether you live in a city or if you live in a township, you need to make sure that you're interacting with your local clerk. For example, I have an address that says Ann Arbor, but I actually live in Pittsfield Township. And so it's really important for me to engage with the Pittsfield Township clerk, not with the Ann Arbor clerk, because the Pittsfield Township clerk is the one that has control over my voter registration and my ballot that I need to utilize on election day. So you want to make sure that you are talking with the right election official as you're engaging in the electoral process. And as we know, we here in Michigan, we have elections every single year. And this year, our election day is on November 7th. And there in Kalamazoo County, you all have elections this year. And on the next slides, I'll be talking about which jurisdictions in Kalamazoo County have local races, but everybody in Kalamazoo County has at least one thing that you should be voting for on your ballot, which is a ballot question. So want to give you a couple of dates that you will want to make sure that you jot down, and we can go back to it later on if you would like. Absent voter ballots will be available in just 9 days from now. On September 28th, our office is required 40 days before the election to make sure that all absentee ballots are ready to go. And so you would get your absentee ballot from your local clerk's office. And so those should be ready on September 28th. The deadline to register to vote online is Monday, October 23rd. And you can also, by that deadline, request and return an absentee ballot. We recommend that's your deadline to avoid any kind of mail delays. We know that in 2020 and in 2022, we saw some mail delays with the postal office. So you want to try to give yourself a little bit of buffer room. And so our suggested deadline is also Monday, October 23rd. You can vote via absentee ballot through your city or your township clerk's office through 4 p.m. on Monday, November 6th, the day before the general election day. Also, make sure that you remember that if you choose to vote via absentee ballot, that must be in your clerk's hands by the end of the day on election day. So by 8 p.m. on election day, your ballot, your absentee ballot must either be in the drop box or at your clerk's office, or it won't be counted. And of course, because of the provision in 2018 that voters decided upon, we now have same-day voter registration in Michigan. And so if you had not been registered, you have the ability to register up to and through election day in your local clerk's office. So on election day, you have until 8 p.m. to register to vote. And if you are in line to register to vote by 8 p.m., you are also able to cast your ballot via absentee on that same day. As I stated, there are multiple jurisdictions in Kalamazoo County that will have elections this November. So again, there's a county-wide ballot question in Kalamazoo County. The city of Kalamazoo, as well as the township of Kalamazoo, have elections. Parchment County, Parchment City, as well as the school district, also have elections. Portage City has an election, as well as Richland Township. So if you reside in any of those jurisdictions, you want to make sure that you are engaging with your local clerk's office. Contact our friends at the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, to make sure that you are understanding what all is on your ballot, as well as you are informed about who is running on your ballot, so you can be informed, as Mr. Bates stated earlier, in preparation to cast your ballot. So we'll talk a little bit about how elections are administered in Michigan. And as I'm sure you all are quite aware, Michigan elections are decentralized. Unlike many other states across our country, it is very much a local control for elections in our state. While the secretary is the chief elections officer for the state of Michigan, it is really the city and township clerk's offices that do the bulk of the work for our elections administration, making sure that you are properly registered to vote, dealing with any type of voter roll cleanup that needs to be done, making sure that you are identifying who is going to be an election inspector, or the people that are working the polls on election day. All that is done at the local level and not the state level. And then you move up to your 83 county clerks who make sure that the ballots are prepared accurately. They select what type of voter machine that you utilize there in your county. And then they certify local elections at the county level through the County Board of Canvassers. Then you bubble up to our office within the Bureau of Elections, and they're the ones that help provide guidance to all of our local officials about how to administer their elections. We deal with declaratory judgments in processing the Campaign Finance Act, as well as the Michigan election law and so many other elections related laws in our office. And then, as I stated, the secretary, she is the chief elections officer for the state. Really quickly, want to highlight about elections inspectors, because that is a way that all of us can participate in our democracy. I know oftentimes we think about participation as making sure that folks are registered to vote and making sure that they have a pathway to get either to their polling location, or making sure that they get their absentee ballot or be a poll observer. But I would encourage Sarahs and other friends to participate in our elections as an election inspector. 45 days or so before the election, that is when local clerks will identify persons to participate as election inspectors. You do have to be a Michigan registered voter in order to be an election inspector, but that's a great way to get an inside view about how our elections run and to make sure that our democracy runs smoothly. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would highly suggest that you contact your local clerk and apply. If you decide that you will not want to be an election inspector, there's also other ways for you to participate. You can be an election challenger, which is typically appointed by a political party, but you can also be a non-governmental entity, such as a sorority or an NAACP member. You can be an election challenger, which basically is making sure that people who are supposed to be in that polling location are actually in the location. So you can challenge a person's eligibility to vote at that location. Or you can be a poll watcher and just observing what's going on inside or outside of the polling location and making sure that election laws, both state and federal election laws, are being abided by. All right. So what are the rights in Michigan? As I stated, both in 2018 and in 2022, Michiganders enshrined new constitutional amendments to expand our right to vote. So in 2018, we voted to have a right to a secret ballot, no reason absentee that we've been talking about, along with same-day voter registration and automatic voter registration. And automatic voter registration means that anytime that you interact with our office at the Secretary of State, you are then automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. So that's a great way for us to be able to capture folks and ensure that they are registered to vote where they currently reside. In 2022, we enshrined additional voting rights, such as at least 9 days of early voting, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Electronic return for military voters, state-funded prepaid postage for returning absentee voter ballots, as well as drop boxes for every municipality. And that means that you can have one drop box. Every municipality has to have at least one drop box. Then a drop box per one drop box per every 15,000 registered voters in that municipality. So if you have 30,000 people in your municipality, you have to have at least 2 drop boxes, and those are paid for by the state. And they have to be distributed equitably across the municipality. So that means you can't just have the 2 drop boxes like right next to each other, or only on one side of town, and the other side of town doesn't have any drop boxes. They have to be distributed equitably. Who can register to vote in Michigan? And this is something that we at the department have been really concentrated on. As Sarah stated earlier, today is National Voter Registration Day, and the secretary had a press conference earlier today to commemorate National Voter Registration Day at Genesee County's jail to talk about that returning citizens and people who are incarcerated pre-sentencing in county jails do have the right to vote. So who can be registered to vote in our state? You must be, of course, a United States citizen. You must be a Michigan resident. You must be at least 17 and a half years old to register. Of course, you need to be 18 to vote, but you only need to be 17 and a half to register. And you must not be currently serving a sentence in jail or prison. And so we want to just pause right there because there is, of course, this myth across the country, or across our state, about felony disenfranchisement. And here in Michigan, we do not permanently disenfranchise people who may have felony convictions. As soon as a person exits a prison in our state, if they have a felony conviction or whatever conviction they have, they are eligible to register and vote. Their registration is not technically canceled, but they need to re-register or update where their address is, and they are eligible to vote immediately. Sarah Lisa was talking earlier about our returning citizens program that I'm really proud of. I need to update my bio because we've been able to help so many more Michiganders. We've actually been able to help about 15,000 returning citizens over the past 3 years to get an ID or driver's license. And all 15,000 of them, upon exiting, are able to register to vote. And because of Prop 3 in 2018, As soon as we get notification that they have exited prison, we are able to register them to vote unless they opted out. So we are really excited to be able to empower our fellow citizens who may be returning from prison, that they can participate in the electoral process just like any other Michigander. We recently actually went to Handling Correctional Facility in Ionia to talk to residents there at the prison about their right to vote upon exiting. And the secretary is committed to ensuring that all eligible Michiganders understand what their rights are, and making sure that we work with our colleagues in the sheriff's office for those who are incarcerated on the county level to allow them to exercise their right to vote, so long as they are not serving a sentence in county jail. And how does one register to vote? You can go online to michigan.gov/vote. You can register online. You can register the traditional way, which is through a paper registration form, and send that back into your local clerk's office. Or you can go straight to your local clerk's office and register to vote. And again, because of Prop 3 of 2018, you can register to vote through, in your local clerk's office on election day all the way up to 8 p.m. In that window of 14 days before the election day, however, you do need to bring proof of residency to your clerk's office. So make sure that if you are trying to help folks register to vote within the last 2 weeks before election day, you let them know that A, they have to go to their local clerk's office, and B, they have to bring 2 forms of residency proof in order to register to vote. You can also register when you interact for public assistance with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Because of the motor voter law, that's a federal law, anytime that you're working with an entity that offers public assistance, and in our case, in our state Department of Health and Human Services, they have an obligation to ask you if you want to register to vote. So I would encourage the Alumnae chapter to contact the local, the county office of DHHS to make sure that they are registering folks to vote. And if you can assist them in any way, maybe that's a great partnership for you to build upon, but certainly want to engage the local county office of MDHHS to ensure that that is occurring. In our office, like I said earlier, we want to make sure that anybody who is eligible in our state can exercise their right to vote. And this includes, of course, people who may have limited English proficiency. Michiganders have the right to bring any person that they would like to help them interpret the ballot so that they can understand what they're voting for. You cannot, of course, influence that person's vote. You can't tell them who to vote for, but you can help them understand what is on the ballot so that they can make their own choice. We've talked about returning citizens, but I also want to highlight voter accessibility. This is something that we are really pushing hard in our office, making sure that voters with disabilities know that we want to make sure that they have the ability to vote as well. Every polling location across our state has to have a voter assist terminal, and it needs to be on and functional because anybody can use it, but in particular, our Michiganders with disabilities definitely use that machine so that they can vote independently and securely. And so as a method of advocacy, I would really encourage the Alumnae chapter and our friends with the Divine Nine and NAACP and League of Women Voters to partner with our disability community. We work in our office a lot with disability community out in West Michigan, but to help them ensure that all Michiganders are able to exercise their right to vote. And lastly, of course, we do not require a photo ID in order to register or to participate in voting. Bring your ID if you have it, but if you do not have an ID, you cannot be turned away. You just need to sign an affidavit of identity and you're able to vote a regular ballot. As I stated, all of us are able to vote via absentee ballot. I can't remember the last time that I actually went to go vote in person. Because of the work that I do, I typically vote via absentee ballot. And so the easiest way for you to request an absentee ballot is online, of course, but you can do it via a paper ballot, or going into your local clerk's office and requesting a ballot. I know that there has been a lot of consternation over the past 3 years about whether or not our elections are secure, accurate, and fair. And believe me, we have had our fill of questions about that in the Secretary of State's office, but we want to make sure that you are feeling confident that our elections are secure here in our state. We have independent board of canvassers on every level to ensure that they are accurately tallied, and they certify our elections. We have local clerks and state officials who we train on an annual basis, and also conduct risk limiting audits after elections to ensure that they are accurate, as excuse me, as well as we ensure that our voter rolls are up to date. We work with an organization called ERIC to make sure that those persons who are not registered are registered in the right place, and we continually update our qualified voter file to make sure that it is accurate. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about our early voting. We're really excited that early voting is coming here to Michigan. We do know that there are a couple of jurisdictions that are going to try out early voting this year, but for the majority of Michiganders, you'll be able to participate in early voting next year as we get ready for the presidential primary. It is one of our newest constitutional amendments to create early voting options. So you can go onto our website to look up where your early voting locations will be 60 days before an election. So that will be before absentee ballots come out, before our move ballots come out for persons who are overseas and military families. 2 months before election day, you'll be able to figure out where your early voting site is. According to the constitutional amendment, every jurisdiction, both cities and townships, must have at least one early voting site. And it's up to the local clerks to decide how many and where those early voting sites are located. So like I said, it is very important for you to engage with your local clerk's office so that you can talk to them about where those early voting sites may be located, because they also have to be equitably distributed across the jurisdiction. And so it's helpful if you can talk to your local clerk about where those are located. The early voting period has to be at least 9 consecutive days, ending on the Sunday before the election. And local jurisdictions can decide to have more than 9 days, up to 29 days in total. So your city, your township must have 9 days, but it can have up to 29 days, so almost a month of early voting. All early voting sites must be open for at least 8 hours every day. When I used to live in Tennessee, we had early voting, and it was so very helpful for me, because at that time I was a nurse, and so I worked 12-hour shifts, and so I couldn't necessarily go on election day all the time. But early voting makes it a lot more flexible for people who have alternative type jobs or may be working multiple jobs and can't necessarily get off of work on Tuesday at X time to X time, but can go to an early voting site, cast their ballot just like you would do on election day. And early voting must be offered for all statewide and federal elections. So every election in an even number year must have early voting. But a jurisdiction can offer early voting on odd number years if they so choose. And we have more frequently asked questions or answers to the questions on our website. So if you go to michigan.gov/elections, you can find more information about early voting, how it's going to work. I know that many of our clerks across the state are still trying to figure it out. So your local clerk may not have all of the bells and whistles worked out about how early voting will work, but that means that it's a good opportunity for you to talk to them and help them as they are figuring it out. The last thing that I will mention before I turn it back over to Sarah Jones is the Michigan Voting Rights Act. We have been working so very hard over the last year to create the bill, and it is now finally time for the legislature to take up the bill, I believe first in the Senate, to enshrine a Voting Rights Act here in Michigan. As you heard earlier, while we had the right to vote, well, some of us had the right to vote starting in 1870, women, we got the vote a little bit later. The right to vote was not enforced fully across the country until 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was put into place. And over the last almost 60 years, folks, the courts have chipped away, particularly the Supreme Court has chipped away at the Federal Voting Rights Act. And so the Secretary and Senator Darren Camilleri have been working with our office to put forth a Voting Rights Act for us here in Michigan to help restore some of those rights that we may have lost in the Federal Voting Rights Act, and to ensure a few things that we can protect the right to vote for all Michiganders here in our state. So the bill is looking to do 4 things. 1, to prevent voter suppression and voter dilution. We know that voter suppression is an issue that we are facing all across the country and all across our state. And so we want to make sure that folks are on notice that we are going to prevent voter suppression and vote dilution in Michigan. We want to ensure that limited English speaking citizens have the right to vote and are having voter or elections related materials translated in the language that they speak so that they can independently cast their ballot. While the Federal Voting Rights Act only has 4 jurisdictions in our state that must translate their elections related issues into other languages than English, we know that we have a very diverse state. We have more people here in our state from the Middle East than anywhere outside of the Middle East. We have a growing immigrant population from West Africa, from East Europe. And we want to make sure that as they become United States citizens and are eligible to vote, that they're able to do so whether or not they are proficient in English. And so we're trying to put this Voting Rights Act together to protect all of our Michiganders. We also want to make sure that voters with disabilities are protected as well. Too often, folks are not ensuring that that VAT that I spoke about earlier is up and running. And we want to make sure that our Michiganders with disabilities are able to vote independently as well. And then lastly, as this is really important for the organizations on the Zoom this evening, is that eliminate the barriers for organizations to assist voters in getting to the polls. Since I have been at the Secretary's office for the past 4 years, that is the question that has been repeatedly come to me. Can I take people to the polls? Is it legal for me to take people to the polls? And currently, there is a ban in Michigan to give rides to the polls. We want to eliminate that barrier in our state. We want to make sure that democracy, forward-thinking organizations like Delta Sigma Theta, like the NAACP, like our Divine Nine Sisters and Brothers and the League of Women Voters are able to take voters who need rides to the polls to their polling location. It just makes sense. And we want to make sure that that is, in fact, the law here in our state. We also know that a lot of folks are afraid of banning people from giving food or warmth to voters who may be in long lines like we saw in Georgia. We are not having that here in Michigan. And so a part of the bill says clearly that organizations can provide food or can provide water, can provide warming items to residents who may be in long lines trying to exercise their right to vote, and making that the law so that we know that we are doing everything that we can to help residents stay in line if they have to in order to cast their ballot. So what do we need from you? SARS and friends, we need your help with this. We need you to contact your legislators and your senators to support the Michigan Voting Rights Act. We want you to encourage the community to learn more about the Michigan Voting Rights Act and to support it, and to submit testimony on the importance of the Voting Rights Act. In particular, the provisions that I just spoke about this evening, but anything else that you found that is of importance to you in the Michigan Voting Rights Act, we need you to submit those testimonies so that the members of the House and the Senate understand that Michiganders from all across the state really want this bill to be passed and passed this year. Lastly, SARS and friends, there are a few things that we want you to do. We want you to educate voters, as you do all the time, on their rights and options to participate in the electoral process. We want you to help folks get registered to vote. Make sure that if they want to, they can get an absentee ballot to share information about our upcoming elections. But we also want you to participate as an election worker. It's crucial that we have folks from all walks of life to participate in our election. What we don't want you to do, of course, is to influence anyone's vote in exchange for goods or services. You cannot collect or return another person's absentee ballot application or their ballot. Of course, there's exceptions for family members, mail carriers, and deputized election officials, but the writ large rule is that you cannot collect or solicit to collect a person's absentee ballot and turn it back in. And don't assist anybody if they didn't ask you to. Simple enough, but has to be said. We want you to make a plan to vote. We want to make sure that you register voters, and we want to make sure that you stop the spread of misinformation. If you have questions about how elections are run in our state, first, of course, go to our website, michigan.gov/vote. But also, you can reshare the information that you find on our website on your website. We know Delta has a website, the League of Women Voters, NAACP, our Divine Nine brothers and sisters. Feel free to repopulate stuff that you found on our website on your website. People may not want to come to the Secretary of State's office or website, but they will go to yours for one reason or another. So make sure that you're sharing our information so that folks understand what their rights are and how they can register and participate in the electoral process. I'm really excited to be here with you all this evening. I'm willing to answer any questions that you all may have with the time that we have remaining. Thank you, Sarah Jones, for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Soror Craine. What a wealth of information. I'm just writing and listening and trying to absorb as much as I can. Those of you who do have questions, if you could put those in the chat for Soror Craine, we will take a look at those. And while the questions are coming in, I have a couple of questions. One, can you take your cell phone into your ballot box or your voting booth with you?
Yes, you can, but you can't take a picture of the ballot. So what we started to do in, I believe, 2020 is that if you want to take a selfie, we'll have a selfie kind of backdrop that you can take as you're heading out of the polling location. You can take a quick selfie, letting folks know that you voted and encouraging them to vote too, but you actually can't take a picture of your ballot as you're voting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions that anyone has? I have another question. You talked about election challengers and poll watchers. What is the benefit of being either one?
So you can because you're able to see the process from the inside. Usually, if you are not an elections inspector, a poll worker, then you're on the outside of the precinct. But being a challenger, you get to be really up close to what's going on as people are checking in to get ready to cast their ballot. You can see how that process is working and challenge it. If you feel that somebody is not actually registered to vote or should not be voting at that precinct. But even just as a poll watcher inside of the precinct, that's also good just to make sure that the administration of the election is going well. You can also contact 866-OUR-VOTE or our office if you think that there are issues going on inside of the polling location, so there's not a delay in transmitting information that we might need because you're on the outside and having to wait for a resident to come out before we find out about an issue that may be occurring.
Following up on that, do you have the opportunity to select where you would go, or is it an assignment?
If you're a poll challenger or a poll worker, yes. And you can, if you're a election inspector, you can give your name to the clerk's office. They select who they will hire. However, for a poll challenger, you can state that you want to be a challenger in a specific jurisdiction, and so long as there's not any an issue with your presentation to the local clerk's office, you can work in that jurisdiction and you choose which precinct you want to be a challenger for that day.
Thank you. So Parker LeGrone, do you see any other questions?
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I do have one. So Sora, you talked about some calls to action, I'm going to call them, in terms of things that people can do, particularly around advocacy and calling representatives for the voter rights, the Voters' Bill of Rights. We do have, this is a collaborative event, so we do have other organizations here. And if there were, I would say, 3 key things that we as organizations could do to not only get people registered to vote, but just to really hone in on some action items, what would be those 3 things?
So outside of the Michigan Voting Rights Act, I would say making sure that people understand about the new opportunity to participate in early voting. So talking to folks about how that is on its way. It may not be available for Kalamazoo right now, but in preparation for the presidential primary in February, they need to know like what's going on. So educating folks about early voting. You do have an election coming up in November, so making sure that people are clear about the upcoming election in November and who's on the ballot in those various jurisdictions, and letting them know to get prepared for that. And then the third thing is to ensure helping us demystify and debunk misinformation about how our elections run. That's so either going to our YouTube page, I think it's just Michigan Department of State. I'll drop the link in the chat. Too many links. Or going to michigan.gov/vote or michigan.gov/elections, and making sure that people know where to get verifiable, correct information. I think those are some things that you can do.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that is really helpful because a lot of times, as we are especially going into this election cycle, we think about ways to both get out the vote, but I think those are 3 really good key things to hone in on, especially demystifying what goes on in our elections and getting people out to vote, and just reassuring people that we want you to vote. Your vote really does count, and especially in those local elections. So I think this is a good way to even segue. There is a comment in the chat from Chris with the League of Women Voters who'd like to share that there is a commissioner and mayoral candidate forum, which is going to happen on Wednesday, October 11th from 5 o'clock to 7 p.m. And that's at the WMU Student Center Ballroom. And I believe this is for the Kalamazoo Commission and Kalamazoo's mayoral race. And so I think that is a really good thing to plug and to keep informed, and to also inform the folks that we have audiences with, so that people can learn about who's on the ballot, who's running, and know that our city commission races and our mayoral races are also nonpartisan elections. So it's very important to understand what people stand for, what principles they are. And our local elections are critical and are often decided by so few people. So we encourage people to certainly go out to that forum and learn more. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So Soror Jones, I will pass it back over to you to take it out.
Thank you. And what I have a couple of action items that I need for the attendees to help me out with. I have placed a link in the chat for our survey. Please fill that out. That helps us in our planning. It helps us to review this program and again for future programs. Also, I need you all, perhaps you can't do it right now, but in your social media, go to our Facebook page, Kalamazoo Alumni Chapter at Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and like our page. You can also go to NPHC of Kalamazoo and like their page, as well as NAACP Metropolitan Kalamazoo Branch on Facebook and like their page. On Instagram, you can follow us at Kalamazoo DST and NPHC_of_KZoo. We'd appreciate you going to our website so you can see our future events that we will have. Let's see here. Coming up on September 30th, Delta Sigma Theta will be having our Midwest Impact Day of Service library project. If you can go to our website, you'll find information on that. On Saturday, October 21st, we're having a workshop on fraud, scam, and identity theft prevention. So if you go to our website, you will find that information. Is Corey King still on?
Yes, I'm here.
If you would like to talk about your Freedom Fund event coming up.
Oh, yes. So I may have to pass this on to President Fields if she's here, because I don't remember all the exact information about the Freedom Fund dinner coming up, but I do know to be at the Radisson, as it was last year. The date of it, I have to look that up real quick.
People can go to your website,
right?
Correct?
They can go to the website and all the information.
Facebook.
And also, the benefit about going to the website is that people can find information about how to buy tickets for the event, which is extremely important. So yes, go to the website and that information will be there.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to our chapter president, Dr. Yvonne Jackson, for our goodbyes.
Thank you, Soror Jones. I am excited about all the information that we just learned. And more than likely, we are preaching to the choir, looking at the names here in the room. But it is important, like Soror Craine said, that we share the information. And so if you find out that someone has misinformation, as she said, then hopefully you have the ability and feel comfortable in educating them with all the information that you just learned tonight. I do want to say there was one comment before I continue my thank you from one of our visitors. Melinda Stevenson said, I work for the Department of Corrections and providing returning citizens with the identification prior to their release has been very helpful. So I wanted you to know, so Craine, that information that there is someone here who appreciates your work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Sarah Jackson. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And so again, I want to thank Sora Craine for coming, representing the state and our regional social action team. I do want to thank Sora Danielle Stephen Atara from the Detroit Alumnae chapter, and also our state facilitator, social action facilitator. I want to thank the National Panhellenic Council, Mr. Bates, and the Metropolitan Kalamazoo Branch of the NAACP, and Mr. King, for all of your encouragement and information that you provided for us today. And we will continue to have our information posted, as Sora Jones said. And again, if you do have questions, I believe in the survey, if there's some information that you didn't feel comfortable in asking, you can also put that information in the survey. And that will help us to better serve you in the future. So again, I want to bid you adieu and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
All right, we're good. I just wanted to make sure we had everything.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. And we got out early, so that's great.
Yes, we did. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Yep,
Bye-bye.
you too.